Okay, let's start. Good evening and good morning, Unicorn fam. We're back at it again with Town Hall number 61. You may have noticed that this town hall has a different schedule than usual. We're doing this to cater to more time zones. Future town halls may also be a different schedule, so make sure to check out our Discord events section to stay updated. As always, we've got our fearless leader, Crypto Unicorn CEO and co-founder Aron Beierschmitt, as well as our growth director Zayuri. They have updates for everybody before the questions start. Take it away, y'all. Good morning.
Thanks, Barkley, as always, for the wonderful intro. A short kind of, I guess, high-level overview, and then love to get into questions on my end. After the chaos of the last 60 days, right, the dust is kind of finally beginning to settle on our end. I mean, what remains at Laguna is a very small and lean team of individual owners. It's been a radical change, but one that, was absolutely necessary. I know there's been a lot of calls for me to kind of come in, particularly in this town hall, and pitch the new vision for crypto unicorns. And so I appreciate everyone's patience on this. It has certainly taken me a minute to reorient to this kind of new reality that we face. When I look kind of back at everything with the benefit of hindsight, I think ultimately I deeply regret kicking off asset inflation with the launch of the game, right? Like that put us in this position in which we were trying to bring net new demand to match this massively increasing asset supply, particularly with things like unicorns. And market conditions, some of our early struggles, et cetera, right? Like we've really only seen a couple of games like actually make this work. Axie, Peg Axie, Steppen come to mind. And those games all had very, bullish kind of market conditions. And obviously there was a pop and drop with each of those projects. So when I look at the fully on-chain game, a big part of this is this desire to return us back to our roots as a collectible NFT project. And I think we all need to begin really thinking about what comes next, should we choose the fully on-chain game direction as a social TCG or trading card game. High level, I want people to come in that are external from this community. I want people to come in and be incentivized to purchase cards. Obviously, those cards have gotten cheaper over time. And they're going to put those cards at risk through the gameplay. Cards are going to get burned, right? Because we need deflationary mechanisms. I think that is one of the smartest ways to proceed forward. And the yield, the reason to come in, purchase cards, put them on the table and at risk is going to be from what remains in the DEX as well as the XY rewards should we see price appreciation from here. So listen, I get this as a drastic pivot from our prior vision. That prior vision really only made sense when we had the resources to pursue it. I think it's just important to understand, we need to understand the reality of where we're at today. I think we need to look back historically at where we've had success in the past, and it was for sure in the fully on-chain space and us distributing assets that didn't necessarily inflate or had very limited inflation associated with them, cap supplies and things of this nature. And I think, ultimately we've got to kind of come together and decide, what the best opportunity is going to be going forward. So I gave a big forum kind of post yesterday, which I need to look at today for responses and feedback on, just trying to acknowledge some of the core pieces of feedback that we've been given as far as the first iteration of the fully on-chain game is concerned. And so I think it's very important to continue to address that feedback, expect additional updated versions of that proposal. I expect a working session here to deep dive into the weeds. And again, trying to get on the same page with what we think is going to give us the best opportunity going forward in light of the situation we just experienced, as well as kind of the market conditions that we expect over the next few months. Kind of adjacent to this, I think it's important that we also deeply consider the proposals coming out from both SJ and John Paragon. I think in the current state that we're in, it makes the most sense to pick a singular project to support, make sure that project is deeply integrated inside of our economy. And especially given rewards for those, for any of these games are going to need to come from the DAO, both in the form of CU and potentially XI if we see price appreciation above and beyond operating costs. Obviously, any additional revenue from secondary trading, IRL deals on toys and merch, obviously ETH and XI price appreciation again, right, will increase that yield over time, right? I don't think it makes sense to try to support multiple ideas in this. So as I expressed in the forum, we need to evaluate John Paragon's and SJ's ideas, against, quite frankly, the fully on-chain game as we iterate based on community feedback. And ultimately, I'm really advocating that we pick a single direction to back and put the resources behind that, regardless of what that means for LG. So generally, that's kind of high level where my head is at. Focus remains on iterating on the fully on-chain game based on community feedback. I do not want to kick off development, particularly on Uniforge and the Twilight Tactics 2.0, until we've solidified that design. We're obviously working on some final wrap-up snapshot stuff to make sure Unim and CU get distributed to players based on what they had in the game bank, things of that nature. Then we are working on the Shadow Forge updates, Ritual Recycler, new levels, things that we've already kind of discussed on that front. And again, I'm trying to ensure that we have enough time to solidify a design that we all feel good about and get an opportunity to actually put something out there into the market, hopefully into more favorable conditions. Once again, if the fully on-chain game is ultimately what gathers the most support. And I'll reinforce again, if LG feels it's in the best opportunity for us to step back, we will. Certainly not something that I'm going to close the door on. I'll keep an open mind around it. Obviously, I'm putting forward an idea that I believe will work based on the situation that we're in, based on what I think that I have learned over the last few years of trying to manage and scale these economies. And again, in light of, I think we will look back and I missed time in the market by, call it 90 days. I think that'll be the kind of sad reality of that. But it is the reality that we face. And so I'm very focused on, again, taking the reality of the now and trying to optimize for what's going to give us the best shot at turning a corner here. And at the very least, having something that is baked on chain that is actually going to, again, have a kind of transparent, cyclical reoccurring event and effectively a fight over the yield that remains. And right now, it doesn't look like a lot of yield that, fuck around on this thing. I have way more of an incentive if John Paragon and SJs are better options to either put LG on another project. Again, we'll have to deal with that if we go that route, but we're also bag holders here, right? So I'll continue to express an open mind on that front if a legitimate opportunity comes forward that seems to have a better shot. So I'll stop there, Sparkly. Obviously, that was a lot. Happy to dive into any pieces. And yeah, let's get the questions.
All right, sounds good. I'm sure everybody has their own questions, but before we move forward, let's run by the rules. We have a limit of 3 questions per person. I'll skip any questions that have already been answered to save on time. Let's make those questions good. Any questions related specifically to your account, please reach out to us on the mod support channel so the CM team can take care of that for you. To ask a question in voice, press the request to speak button. The button looks like a raised hand. You can queue up at any time. And once we accept your request, you'll see a green bar at the top of your Discord. Click accept to begin speaking. We also have written questions. It's on the town hall thread in the feedback channel. Let me go ahead and share this on chat as well as on general. Take note that we prioritize spoken questions over written ones. You can also head on stage and ask any question that you might find there. We also have anonymous questions, but we are deprioritizing them in favor of rewarding those who ask interesting questions in the Town Hall number 59 thread, or those brave enough to step up on the stage. Let us begin. Okay, let's start with a couple of questions from JBP3 in the thread. Will you provide a proper budget and timeline for the LG solution once we have the requirements locked down so it can be properly evaluated by the DAO, like what is expected from the solutions? Hello? Uh, Aaron, you're on mute.
My bad. Yes, the short answer is yes. I mean, as we always have, we will provide a breakdown of where monthly expenses are going. As we've shared already, they're roughly 150K per month, which is a rather drastic reduction from where we've been historically. And the idea of, hey, it should take this many months to get this fully on chain game done, and then you multiply that by what we're talking as a monthly run rate, and you'll have the answer on that front. So the answer is yes. That should actually come out tomorrow, I think, based on what I saw in Slack. So yes, the answer is yes on that front. And there's nuance around, well, here's the Rainbow Rumble rates and things of that nature, and discussion that needs to happen on that front as well. So lots to dig in on that side. The only caveat is obviously we need to know what the fully on-chain game ultimately is. We need to be landed on that design before we have any idea of exactly how long it will take. And if I have a fear, it is that community expectations for that game are just going to be difficult to make on a timeline that makes sense. And I think the thing to reinforce is we have limited resources now. I think we have to think about when we expect a market turnaround and optimal timing to be set up and ready to launch. And so, again, we've put forward an idea that makes use of things like a modified version of the Shadow Forge to create the Uniforge, right? Takes the Twilight Tactics template, but removes a lot of what players hated with Twilight Tactics 1.0, and I think leans into a new and fun direction. I know people have called out like the battle itself and regional control needs to get defined. I think I'm thinking of that, like how do you build an on-chain Risk game? Because I've always enjoyed the strategy around Risk. I think the prediction market on top is another very interesting thing. Even if we choose not to build that, it would be permissionless for anyone to build something like that on top of it. And I think these are the ideas that appeal to crypto natives. I think we have to really accept that is our only shot going forward at being successful. And so I really want to try to return to that focus and not get distracted by things that I think we've tried in the past that ultimately have not worked.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate something that we were talking about in Sirius earlier, but the flow of events was we're shutting down the core game. What do we think is the next best option? We came up with this fully on-chain game. We truly did not think anyone like John Paragon or SJ would seriously want to put a proposal together and be able to execute something that could resemble a core game experience on the timeline that we need. That was like a really big surprise to us. So while it does feel, I guess, a little chaotic and there's a lot of unknown and uncertainty right now, that wasn't by design, right? That is just us reacting to what's happening within the DAO. And it's honestly a good thing, right? This is what DAOs are supposed to do, is give bag holders the opportunity to put things forward, others to discuss, and then all of us to come to a consensus. The opportunity cost there is just time. It's slower to come to consensus when it's a bunch of anonymous, decentralized folks discussing ideas and budgets through forums. But this is like how it's designed to work. So I just want to be clear, like we're not moving slow for the sake of it. We're not playing for time. This wasn't some sort of, pre-planned apparatus. We're surprised, humbled, and really glad that folks like John Paragon and SJ have come forward and are putting time into stuff like this and thinking about it. Even if we end up going the fully on-chain route, it's just really important we think about all of the options, what's best, and how we maximize for all parties here, LG and community included. But we were just as surprised as many of you. So this is us trying to make sure we're not forcing the hand of the DAO or the treasury into something we don't want, but considering all the viable options. And if a community member actually does have a path, hell yeah, baby, let's go. We're not here to block it. We're here to enable the best path forward. But as Aaron said, we're getting close to the point of we need to pick something and get out of the realm of indecision.
Yeah, I personally am looking at the next few weeks as trying to really solidify across the board. So the people who have been active and engaged, let's just continue the combo, try to get a working session done. And again, try to solidify what the fully on-chain game is so that it can stand next to the other proposals, and we can effectively proceed forward with the option that we collectively feel is best.
All right, sounds good. Let's go ahead with the next question from G. Will we be able to have a clear burn rate and transparency for LG support and the cost of this loop moving forward after the initial development is complete?
The answer is the same, sir.
All right.
It's here is LG's costs going forward, right? And we can nitpick around, what are we going to do with second party? What are we going to do with reward rates, right? I've already made the commitment that, we're not going to be increasing burn, say Xi triples from here. The increase is going to go towards rewards and stuff like that. I mean, that's the only way to bootstrap this going forward, right? So it's not like I'm going to fire, blockchain engineers when they ship the damn game, right? There will always be a need for some level of ongoing maintenance, right? It's not to say that we couldn't reduce costs further, but again, then we're talking about moving on to another project, and I know how that's gone over every time I've ever brought it up, right? So don't expect costs to come down. I have cut 80% of our burn to get us here to take this one last shot at surviving through this moment. The expectation remains that crypto returns to a bull market, prices appreciate. From there, we're earning more per month than the operating cost of keeping everything going, and then we go forward, right? So again, we will continue forward with the level of transparency that we have to date, which is more than any other project, certainly in this space, right? So if this becomes a game of trying to nitpick us every second of the way, don't think we're moving forward in good faith. Are there any follow-ups to that, JP?
One last question from
Beaver?
him. Is there a certain price point for which you start kicking over rewards to the players? Do we have specifics around that?
Above 20 cents, roughly. Yeah, above 20 cents,
Of
roughly.
20 cents, chat. All
So
right.
it's not too far off. Again, everybody's going to make a different assessment of where they think Xi is going to be. I remain pretty bullish on the project, just generally. They have started the large number of ESI unlocks that began at the end of August. So there's been technically very enormous amounts of inflation because ESI has become claimable for people who maximally effectively staked it, so they can get kind of that one-to-one value back. And so far, most of it appears to be flowing into the staking pools and the other mechanisms that they've set up, right? So that Band-Aid has actually been ripped off. That was probably one of my primary worries in August, looking out to the next few months. And I wouldn't say Xi is down any more than any other coin in the last, in this horrible market chop that we're experiencing, right? So I remain very bullish on the opportunity there. And, it does not take, a 2 or 3x to get back to the point where we're accruing rewards that can be put forward as incentives for whatever new game loop we have on that front. That's a good question.
Yeah, I've had a few people suggest in my DMs about setting various thresholds. If it hits 30 cents, then X thing happens. If it hits 50 cents, then Y thing happens. And generally, that would be kind of an unlock either in rewards or to the community or whatever else. I like the spirit and the idea behind that, but I think we do want to be a little bit careful setting these kind of rigid numbers in the abstract, because we have to try to think about what's the future going to look like if that happens, right? If Xi goes to 50 cents, will there be other opportunities that have popped up that we might want to otherwise pursue as a community or a DAO? And then we're beholden to going, nope, we already earmarked all this for distributions to everybody, but now the game has changed and we have to scramble. So I like the spirit of it, but we should just be a little bit careful with setting these kind of very rigid cliffs with that kind of stuff. But the goal is that price appreciation on Xi gives us more money to start filling up the coffers and begin thinking about what the expansion plan is for the IP, not necessarily LG.
Correct. I mean, when we did these layoffs, the whole purpose was what is the minimum viable group of people necessary to perpetuate this thing? And that is what we're at, right? And so, it very much was an exercise of how lean can we possibly be to try to thread the needle here, wait out for better market conditions, and then ultimately the thing that we have to come to a conclusion on as quickly as possible is what game loop is going to give us the most viable opportunity for success ahead. I'm going to continue to work and propose on my idea while keeping an open mind to other options that are coming forward from the community itself.
All right, those are all the questions from Jay. Thank you so much. Next up, we have an anonymous question. Anonymous person number one is asking, what do you think of John's project?
I don't know enough about it to comment. I think John
Is there somewhere I
taking
can read more about John's project? If there's a
Yeah,
proposal
exactly
floating
right.
around out there, I would love to see it. I have a very high level kind of general understanding. Honestly, I would love more detailed understanding, and maybe that's coming after his chat with Zai today. So, I don't mean that in like a snarky pressure way, but if y'all know something that we don't, or there's some sort of a proposal out there, please pass it along so that I can give you some real feedback on it. I feel like I've been kind of waiting to see what that is before I can say amazing idea or this is going to be really tough. I know it involves raising funds. That's about it so far.
All right,
Yeah, I
yeah.
would love to know more. And I have stressed this with John and DMs that, ultimately, if rewards or, if he's going to build it in a silo and just leverage the assets, more power to him, right? If he's going to request of the DAO, Xi rewards, CU rewards, treasury funds, etc., obviously we need a lot more detail. At least LG is certainly a lot more aware of what SJ has planned on that front. I've even played his tower defense game. So again, John has a long way to go in terms of sharing that. I think his approach is just he's trying to, get everything kind of ready and then, should be sharing out more information. I don't think he's withholding information on purpose. I just think he's getting ready. But it's a timing matter here. And again, anyone in the world can permissionlessly do whatever they want with the assets themselves. It's more of a factor of are people coming back requesting reward allocations, funding from the treasury, et cetera. And that's where obviously we need to a lot more detail.
All right. Next, let's have questions from NFT Gibby. Number one, if the DAO puts forward a vote to stop all spending by LG and remove them as the developer going forward with the intention of requesting bids to move forward with the IP and remaining treasury funds, will LG kill the idea with the 200 million RBW, or will you allow the DAO to weigh in on who we want to guide the future direction of CU?
Gibby, it's 20 million CU. May have missed a token conversion earlier this year. I'd likely vote that down. Because what are we really talking about? Just pausing everything? There's a certain level of just okay, y'all can self-organize. We'd need at least a DAO manager, to stick around, some people to sign multi-sig transactions and stuff. Again, the odd thing about this is the community has certainly had enough tokens over the last 12 months to stake and actually outvote us, especially if you assume my investors who are getting token distributions are not going to stake to vote. We're actually losing the super majority that we've had in the past. Or the ability to apply that no matter what is a better way of putting that. So the irony of this is y'all can actually go in and vote us out. I would follow the letter of the charter, to the T. That's the whole point of this thing. So rally people behind your cause, NFT Gibby, and come at me in the DAO. That was the way it was built. So that's kind of, I guess, my official statement on that. But you should not expect us to just roll over and let you do that without you actually putting stake down.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting question of, I understand the logic of where you're coming from. Let's literally stop all spending and then see what we really need to drive this thing forward. we're kind of doing that already, just to a slightly lesser degree of like, okay, we cut 80 to 90% of spending. If you literally cut all of it, it's like there's no one left to shepherd any of the deals or liaise anything. And I'll be honest, if you guys do that, I'm gonna go find another job, and I'm just kind of out, so we can do that, but it has such a huge opportunity cost. If there isn't something else lined up, I think a proposal of, hey, we have this new leader that wants to come forward, and they have X resume, and this is their plan, and we're confident for Y reasons. Let's put them at the helm. I would actually be more in favor of that, because at least there's someone there to kind of drive some of the stuff forward. If we just go like zero spend and just get rid of everyone, like Aaron said, that means you lose the DAO manager, you lose the guy that does like the payments of the Xi rewards for the stuff we're already committed to. Like a lot of stuff just breaks and disappears that still requires some human intervention. So yeah, I mean, I would fight against that just purely from the sense of I don't think that's going to create the most optimal outcome for the DAO or maximize the chances of this unicorn project succeeding to some degree. But yeah, as Aaron said, in theory, that's the framework of the DAO, baby. If you can put it forward and get enough people to support you, absolutely. And the inflection point is very rapidly arising where game theory is getting interesting. If y'all can agree, votes are starting to stack up real quick, And there's a lot of tokens in the hands of former LG employees that may or may not be excited to vote in line with LG, and could be folks that some of y'all could rally as well, right? There's a lot of idle tokens out there that haven't been staked either way. All food for thought. I think this is where, in my mind, our DAO is real, and this is the fascinating game theory of that DAO.
Yeah. I mean, I'll echo all of that. I don't mean to be flippant in my responses. Like this is the entire purpose of having this system. And it's why I've got an open mind to saying, all right, LG needs to remove itself even further from the burn to allow, funding for SJ or John's project. Like I am open to that world, because if I genuinely believe, my own CU bags are better served, that's an option we'll consider and vote in. And I think that's a much better spot than at least what Gibby proposed initially. So any follow-ups on that?
All right, we have a follow up from Gibby. How do we as a DAO solicit offers for somebody to step in if LG is insistent on holding on?
Oh my God, you would actually put forward a proposal to say, here is a group that at this cost per month will do X, Y, and Z. And I'm putting forward a vote to remove LG as a core dev and replace them with this developer. That's actually how you would do it. It's a single proposal.
Pretty much just write exactly that into a proposal and say, I want to replace these guys and put in these new guys. And there you go.
Again, the crazy incentive that we have is if I look at that and go, wow, these guys have a better shot, I'm going to vote for my bags ultimately. I've already had to go through the pain of LG. We have certainly potential to work on other projects over time if we want to, and the team still wants to do that. So, open-minded on that front.
Yeah,
but
I just want to be ultra clear. We don't want to just step back and throw the reins at somebody else. I feel like we're getting kind of accused on all sides, where some folks have been like, the captain should go down with the ship. You guys need to develop it. Then there's other people kind of like Gibby is implying here that, well, you guys are just going to vote no to anyone that wants to take over anyway, so I shouldn't even bother trying to find a deal. We're in the middle between those two. We are happy to build the on-chain thing that we think is best if we have the support. We're also happy to hand the baton if that feels like the best path forward that has the support. We're very open-minded here. In fact, it's almost the blank canvas gray area problem that's compounding this a little bit, is that we have all these options and there isn't one obvious path that makes the most sense. But just want to be super clear, we're not living in the extremes on either side. We're not trying to run away, nor are we trying to force you guys to play a fully on-chain experience that you don't want to play either. We're just simply trying to forge a path that makes sense with what we have left. And I totally understand that there isn't a perfect solution, but that's why we're all here working through it, right? We're trying to find the best possible solution given the situation we're stuck in now.
All right. The last question: who technically owns the diagram? Would it be the CU DAO or LG?
Our governance manager signed the MOU for that. Obviously, there is my relationship with the Xi team and what Xi cares about. And so, I don't really know, like, if LG completely goes away, right? Does Xi keep funding a thing with a bunch of people they've never met? So again, there's probably certain configurations where, I stick around part-time token comp and Vanessa sticks around to facilitate DAO governance and things like that, where it would be feasible to keep that going. But again, like, it's going to be pretty difficult for, I certainly need to be in support of a project, I think, for the Xi grant to continue. Obviously, that was the thing that I closed and is the relationship that I've maintained through the ups and downs, which, again, not looking for credit here, but I hope people at the very least acknowledge that I've done some work to keep that relationship strong, despite the situation that we're in. It's rather amazing that relationship is still very strong. So we shouldn't ignore that fact. So it's technically with CU down is the short answer to that. The long answer is, obviously, like many things in this space, it comes down to relationships.
Yeah, LG's presence is a value add. It is maybe the way to summarize it. But there's some gray area, right? The beauty of blockchain is that it's generally a meritocracy, right? And people are incentivized to just figure out what works, what's going to make money, right? What is Xi's goal? Get excitement, get hype, get transactions on the blockchain, and ultimately get new users spending money in their ecosystem. If they're confident the DAO can do that without LG, I don't see any reason why they would be upset about that. If they're not confident that the DAO can do it without LG, I could see why they'd be upset about that. There's some of this stuff is hard to discuss in the abstract because it really depends on what is the thing, who's backing it, what's the funding. If John Paragon comes out tomorrow and says, guys, I raised $1.5 million, I got this great dev, we're going to do this thing, that could be a really compelling pitch, and maybe Xi's excited about it. The devil's really in the details with that stuff. But at the end of the day, they're a blockchain. They want volume. They want traffic. They want people to use it. If we can achieve that goal, then we're all aligned. Business as usual.
For sure.
All right, well said. Those are from NFT. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Future Yesman. He wants to start by saying, thank you for the town halls and updates. Always appreciated. And this question is, can you give us an update on the CU buyback and burn from last month?
You mean in terms of what we're going to do in September? Sorry, I guess I'll try to answer based on what I think the question was. Obviously, in August, secondary volume, right? Some amount of buyback and burn associated with that, LP fee revenue. So basically, at the beginning of every month, we will look at what the aggregate LP fee was to the Treasury, what the aggregate secondary volume was to the Treasury. We will then take that and burn the CU that was earned via LP, use the ETH to buy back and burn CU in addition. And then, every single month we will rinse and repeat that. So obviously, given the situation, it's not going to be super meaningful, but what you can expect is every month towards the beginning, not on the exact beginning of the month, you're going to get a report. It's going to say, this is how much we're buying back and burning. And then over the subsequent weeks, you will see that operation occur. So that will be an ongoing and reoccurring thing. Obviously, we're pretty close to the Neon Sign deal, which is the first toys and merch deal. I believe that is $10K a year guaranteed. They're expecting a few $100,000 in rev share off of that opportunity. Obviously, as things like that hit, we'll make an announcement and top up the market making bots to purchase the 50%, right? Because 50% goes to the Treasury, 50% buyback and burn. So regardless of what the source of revenue is, right, the sequence and cadence will be expect a report early in the month, looking at last month, And then over the subsequent weeks in that month, you'll see us execute the buyback and burn operations. We've used groups like Peanut Labs in the past to just set up bots that do the operation for us and smooth it out. I'm not just going to, mash buy on a single transaction kind of a thing. So that's the plan there. Let me know if there's follow-up, Sparkly.
All right, no follow-ups now, so let's move on to an anonymous question. What do you think about Unum usage? If it's decided to remove it completely, is it going to be converted to CU or something similar?
I go back and forth on this. If we go with the fully on-chain direction, I think there is some benefit to just turning Unum into a deflationary currency and kind of saying, okay, we know many people still sit on big balances of Unum, but if we make Unum effectively the lubricant of the game loop itself, and all of a sudden, there's never going to be any more Unum inflated, well, maybe Unum actually has value over time. It might take a hot minute, but as we burn more and more and more of it on chain, there will only be less and less and less of it over time. And I'm very interested in, I know I'm going to get a bunch of shit for this, but all I think that matters now is lining up the right mechanism design tied to the bull market coming back here and trying to time that correctly. I'm past the point of thinking that anyone cares about anything above and beyond the prices of assets and getting some value out of this system. And again, crypto games are about that, and again, I'm fully on board with how do we create degen mechanism designs where eventually somebody goes, shit, I'm going to buy $1,000 worth of Unum because, the value of ETH is 2x from here. Xi is doing great. There's plenty of rewards in this system. And then again, it could add value to an asset that historically has not done well, given it was constantly inflating despite also being burned. So that's kind of where I sit on Unum. I think if we don't go the fully on-chain game route, I'd lean more towards probably eliminating the two-token model, unless there is a very deep reason to integrate it further. I would never advocate for a situation in which Unum inflates from here. So again, if it's fully on-chain game, if the fully on-chain game is the route that we go, I would heavily advocate for probably keeping it. It's purely a deflationary asset. We know a lot of people sit on Unum reserves, so everybody can comply. And then obviously there would be eventually some rush. I think over a third, maybe closer to 50% of the entire supply of Unum is just in the DEX pool at this point, given how much has been dumped against that very small amount of USDC liquidity, right? So to me, it's almost effortless and kind of free to come in here and, again, it's like a soft currency, you buy it. And then over time, maybe it actually starts to have value. And more assets that preserve or have value over time is probably better than less, would be my take. That's a really good question to ask. Open very much to feedback on that front. So
yeah, I've had several people suggest to me, can we just make Unum a meme coin? And I've actually spent a lot of hours thinking about that because it is the perfect memeable thing, right? Unicorns don't really have milk. It's the graphic of it is really great. It has that cool kind of shiny iridescent texture to it. We have this it's more developed than a lot of other meme coins out there, but I actually don't know how you do that. How do you turn SLP into a meme coin? It just kind of is. I see Prof's question about what happens if the price of Unum gets too high because we've burned so much of it and then people can't catch up. That'd be a great problem to have. And even though Aaron says, I don't ever want to go back to a situation where we're inflating Unum, we obviously could, right? So if we did get to that point where it's literally breaking our economy because the price of Unum is so high because there's so much demand, I mean, creating inflation is really easy, but we can always do that. We know how to flip that switch. It's getting us into a situation where we want to flip that switch that I think has been the hard part. So not to say that isn't an issue, but I think that's so far down the road, it would, to me, be in the bucket of amazing problems to have. If we're in a scenario where the price of Unum is so high, it's breaking economic models, man.
Well, that's a part of it. Again, we're past the point of saying, oh, we're trying to create this game layer that's just fun as a game on its own. This is very much a return to where we saw success in the past, which was, gamified mint events and very controlled on-chain mechanisms that didn't have as much variability, didn't have as much player agency. And again, things like the prediction market, which I know people don't really like, me as a way to add additional interest and kind of speculative mania on top of this stuff, right? Look at things that have been successful over the last 12 months in crypto, and it's things like FriendTech and Fantasy Top and Pumped Up Fun, and it's all of these things that are very financially oriented, that are very crypto native. We have always been a very crypto native game. I made the mistake of trying to focus on a whole bunch of things that in hindsight with 2020, and especially in the context of our resource constraints now, just don't make any sense. So let's return back to a gamified collectible NFT project where you are putting assets at risk in a fight over yield. And the bet around the yield front is, quite frankly, that the market moves up and to the right. And if the market does not move up and to the right, every project in the space is screwed. I think we all know that, right? So I just want to continue to reinforce, if we're going the fully on-chain way and the community gives me another shot, I'm going maximally degen. I'm leaning into the kind of shit that I would play that resonates with me as a crypto native. And we're going to focus in on that and think deeply. Everybody needs to kind of think deeply about what you think is going to make us most successful. The option I'm leaning into is the direction I'm outlining here.
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and something that we mentioned, I think, in the last town hall or maybe the one before. There's a member in the audience that's just worth recognizing. It's the Upside Down CyberKong, the guy named Inverted. This is the dude behind Inverted Experiences. He did the very cost-effective booth for us at GDC and also the very cost-effective booth for us at Rare Evo. We're still chatting with his team about trying to come up with some sort of IRL event targeted at normies that leverages the Unicorn IP, something totally separate from gaming, honestly, fairly separate from crypto outside of some back-end stuff, and really trying to see what we can do in the real world to tap into this ticket revenue and connect the IP into something that isn't just crypto gaming speculative assets. Again, this is, in my eyes, a high expected value outcome, but still a small target for us to hit. I want to be clear that this isn't costing us very much right now. The events team is very scrappy. They're kind of an early stage company as well that's working with us to try to bring this thing to life so that we can all benefit. You can see that CyberKong, right? A lot of blockchain native energy at that company. So I haven't talked about this much. We haven't posted about it in Discord or announced it because right now it's ideas, it's pitches, it's stuff we're putting together and trying to raise for. But I just want to highlight it again as we kind of pivot into this direction Aaron's talking about of collectibles and cards and stuff. We are still full steam ahead on all of this generational IP stuff that we've always talked about and still haven't had too much to show for it. So that remains a cost-effective exploration journey, and we're still making progress there. I really hope in a month or two or a quarter or something I can come to you guys and go, holy shit, we got the money, we got the green light, we're doing it, unicorn world is real, and the numbers look amazing. We're just not there yet. So I'm trying to balance this, like I want to let you guys know stuff we're working on kind of in the background, despite all of this, that's kind of unaffected. We can't bank on it. We can't go all in on that, but it is a very real iron in the fire with folks that very much believe in our IP. And I would encourage you guys, if you're listening to this and you either think I'm full of shit or this sounds really exciting, Inverted's here. He's listening. He's absorbing, right? This is somebody I talked to a lot in person at Rare Evo in Vegas. Huge reason why that trip was so important. And we're actively trying to fundraise around this. So if you have thoughts around this stuff, feel free to poke Inverted, send him a message, tag him in Sirius. He's around. He's happy to discuss this stuff with you guys. Again, I don't want to overpromise here, and I don't want to act like this is some bailout that's going to save us necessarily. But every time I look at the proposal and we review the pro formas and all that stuff, there is something to this IP. There's a lot of generic unicorn shit out there that people are spending a lot of money on, and our unicorns continue to test well to all of these normies. And I got to believe there's some way we can capture that and monetize that and just make it a net benefit for the treasury and the DAO, use it as a platform to sell merch, use it as a platform just to get the brand out there and have these bucktooth unicorns become, iconic in the eyes of people that aren't just looking to buy crypto tokens. So that was more words than I wanted to say. Just keep that in the back of your mind. And like I said, Inverted's a super cool guy. I know him through my Genesis CyberKong. So bullish on other crypto folks that speak the crypto language and really understand the ethos of DAOs and what we're trying to do here.
All right, let's get a question from Lemonade. In what capacity are you working with Advisor REF? What specific contributions has he made to CU?
Nothing yet. Trying to get him excited. He made the mistake of going into Sirius the other day. I think my approach with Roth, he's been a long-time advisor to us, effectively since we pivoted into the space. I've caught up with him once every couple of months. What I approached him around is kind of filling a role that LG Jeff used to fill in terms of being this kind of backstop and gut check around overall economic models, and again, being a sounding board kind of across the design that we're working on. I think he and I align very heavily around how to scale and build these systems. He wrote a great article that I think was posted on the 1KX blog, where he discussed how they accepted the fact that, SkyStrife being a fully on-chain game was obviously, like all of them, relatively bottable. And so how they designed the orb, which is kind of their currency for the test, orb distribution, and how they fluctuated it such that, if you tried to bot farm it, it became negative EV very quickly, but real players could kind of keep up with that. And so I'd encourage people to check that out on the 1KX blog and get a sense for how he thinks about the space. It's very similar to mine. And he is the perfect kind of combo of a designer who was like at Ubisoft for nearly a decade, worked on, games you may have heard of like Rainbow Six, was at CCP for a while, and then he was at Dapper. He was at Dapper from CryptoKitties through Top Shots. Then he was over at Lattice working on SkyStrife, the fully on-chain game there. Now he's an EIR. Obviously, I would love to bring him as close as he's willing to come to LG, both for this project and future projects. And so anyway, excited to collaborate with him more deeply. And he brings an enormous amount of firepower, and I would put him up as one of the few people who do understand the space. But think about where he's coming from, CryptoKitties and things like Top Shots, and look at kind of what SkyStrife was, and then start to think about our own fully on-chain game and go, okay, maybe I see some of what they're trying to do with it.
All right. And finally, we have a question from Mr. 69. How safe is the CULP reward? How long is the estimate that we have for it?
I mean, as long as the Xi grant continues, the plan is to continue to pay those out, right? I see no reason to stop that. Heck, some of our investors LP'd. I'm a large LP. Like, there's no reason, I think, to cut those things off. So, yeah, and obviously, if you think about utility for CU, if Xi really goes on a run, inevitably there will be people that chase LP rewards. And it will actually get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to LP if you just if you have a perma bear take on CU. So the plan there is to keep those going. If there's any change to that, like I could see over the long term, if things are just not working out, and there's a worst case scenario where a grant might get pulled, I'd really advocate to keep them going for the first year, knowing so many people did stake for that. So TLDR, foreseeable future, no changes.
All right. Okay, we have a question from Prof. If things don't go well, what would you have for the CU community in the future project you keep mentioning?
The future project, Gods of Olympus is rather unique in how it's getting rolled out, taking many of the lessons that I've learned from the rather brutal experience that Crypto Unicorns has been. So, for example, the initial launch is a DN404 project, which is or contract, which is a hybrid ERC20, ERC721. Pandora was kind of the first to do this in a very janky way, and then a bunch of Ethereum devs like Cygar kind of came forward and put forward an official version of that, which is now called DN404. And I think it's a really fascinating way to tie what we've seen with meme coins to what we've seen with NFTs in a way that's like really very compelling. So the thing that I'm thinking about in terms of a tie-in is some form of Genesis Mint passes to give people a guaranteed mint. It's not going to be a very expensive mint. I have zero desire to raise through mints. One of the major lessons learned. Pandora was a very cheap mint, and now those things are going for several $1,000s a pop. The design of that is to drive pretty significant LP fee revenue through that progress. So that is one of my thoughts, is we'll throw out Genesis Mint passes, which will give people a first line into those Realm Shards. Realm Shards will receive the Gods of Olympus token drop over time and be kind of the foundational asset. They don't inflate ever. There's a race to get Titans out of them, hero gacha, and all that kind of fun stuff. So that is how I'm thinking about that. There is obviously a lot to resolve here, how we choose to move forward, what LG's involvement in CU is, how much the community really wants to participate in the next thing. And again, this one has been hard in the past. When we had the resources to see through the original vision that I had for crypto unicorns, I can understand where the community was pretty resistant. And now, given the situation, particularly with crypto unicorns, and I think the foundational desire of most people here, which is, to find an opportunity to make money and ideally regain losses, right? Like in some ways, we can try as hard as we can with CU. The brutal reality of this space is new projects are just going to get the speculative mania and hype, and the old projects are just not. And so it's one of the reasons I'm going so brutal with a hyper deflationary kind of mechanism design for the fully on-chain game, and taking this bet that we see price appreciation of XIVE, see price appreciation of ETH, which will increase the yield. We see IRL revenue flow in over time, which through buyback and burn, will increase what is left in the DEX to kind of fight over. And so again, it's one of the reasons I'm being so brutal with that. And then I do think, Prof, to your question, like adding on the opportunity to get these guaranteed mint passes as a result of playing the game loop could be an incentive for new players to come in, buy cards, and begin to participate in that. Obviously, the more people do, you can maybe get that flywheel spinning again. Expect more info on this towards the end of the month. I took what was left of our original seed financing and have effectively burned that to get us to the point where we're kind of pitch ready on that project. And we're looking at bringing in, again, collaborators. The people that I have pitched in the space that have seen it are very excited about it. And again, it's to people like Roth, it's more interesting to both get to work on a reboot of CU and a future project than it is, just coming in to CU alone, given the situation and what we face. So great question to ask. That's kind of how I'm planning to do it. It's to tie in Genesis Mint passes where, people who've been major participants in CU are going to get access to kind of the next project. Realm Shards being DN404, being hyper degen, potentially being even launched on ETH mainnet, at the very least on Arbitrum mainnet. I think there's real potential with that, and I am very excited to share that stuff. Obviously, Crypto Unicorns as a project is something I've learned a lot from, and again, I would do many, many things differently, and you're going to see a lot of that in Gods of Olympus. And at the end of the day, everybody can say, you're fucking crazy, that one's going to fail too, or people can go, maybe, just maybe, he's on to something. But I certainly don't want to separate them out. Something very special that we've created here with Crypto Unicorns is this community. And so I want to find a way to tie them together, but in a way that actually potentially helps spin the CU flywheel. And thus this kind of idea of rank on a leaderboard, get access to a Genesis Mint Pass, you actually tie something with unbounded potential. That again, Pandora did, really well for a project that had no utility basically. And again, there's some interesting stuff on that front for sure.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, guys, when I first heard the idea of second IP, we're going to start working on another one, I immediately felt that feeling in my gut of, oh no, all right, how's this going to work out? Can we build in parallel? All this kind of stuff. And I'm really against the idea of just putting something out there for the sake of it. And the more the idea came to life, the more I realized this DN 404 stuff is actually really cool, and it feels criminally underutilized in the space right now. And I think it's because a lot of people still just don't know about it. It sounds a little complicated, so it takes a second to wrap your brain around it. But having one asset that operates kind of as a meme coin and an NFT at the same time is really awesome. And it's just perfect for some of the deflationary style models that we're thinking about in terms of ripping packs and combining things and having the kind of opposite flow of what Crypto Unicorns was based on, which was breeding and the inflation of assets, and then this tiny burn with unicorn souls, and kind of doing it the opposite way, where everything is designed to be combined and inflated, or upgraded is the word I meant, deflated so that you can upgrade into less assets that are more valuable and customized and special to you, and you have a connection to it, rather than this flood of, well, I have hundreds of donkeys that I don't really care about because they were just fallout of bad breeds, trying to build a system where those donkeys can be useful to combine to upgrade and do stuff and power up and all those sorts of things. So the model is kind of coming together. And for folks that are into the techie side of DN 404, there is some cool just overlap Venn diagram of some of the ideas that we had and how this tech works. So something to be excited about. And if we can find a way to cross-pollinate, I mean, in my mind, that's what EVM is all about. All this EVM shit talks the same language. It should be relatively easy for it to sort of integrate and be neighbors, or at least distant neighbors within the same state, maybe is a fair analogy. So yeah, I hope it can all flow and work together and keep some of this community intact, because there is a hardcore group of folks here that kind of become weirdly attached to. It's kind of strange, man. I take a lot of heat from my friends that still work in Axie, and I hang out with Axie Degens and Ronin Maxi still, and they all dog on me all the time for spending my effort on Zai and Crypto Unicorns. So like, why is it worth your time? And I always explain to them, there is a hardcore group of people here that really love this shit, and that is, at the end of the day, the most fundamental aspect of what makes it worth building. This DAO feels real. It really feels like this thing could take a life of its own, even without some of these key pieces that we're relying on right now. It's like an organism. It'll be injured, but it'll heal. It's like a little reptile. It might grow a new foot that's a little crooked, but this thing can regenerate, dude. It's pretty wild. So anyway, sorry, I'll stop soapboxing now, but there's something here that I think we don't want to lose.
Yeah, for sure. It's why I don't want to just see the project abandoned at all. I want to try to position it, but in some ways, again, getting an opportunity, a second shot on goal, kind of for all of us, I think is also worth consideration, especially as we evaluate some of these alternative ideas that have come forward. So lots to come in the coming weeks as we try to solidify and finalize a fully on-chain gaming idea. And again, get more details out of John and, see future iterations of what SJ is working on. Again, we need to look at all of this stuff and try to pick the best path forward. Can't wait forever. Sparkly, a few more questions before we close it out.
Absolutely. In relation to that, we have a question from Wasper. Are we still on track to have an on-chain game in the next 90 days?
If we solidify the design of it like tomorrow, so we need to move on this, right? And that's why, again, it's very unclear to me, and granted, like occasionally I show up in Discord, I got people, asking me to commit Sabuku and shit. And so like, again, we need to get a little bit of a sentiment gut check here around like, if I've had a number of people speak with me and say, trust and faith in LG is gone. And so I've been surprised this morning to see some people come forward and say, honestly, I don't know. I would rather LG stick around and, finish things out. And so let's get some signal around, whether we want fully on chain game LG or we want one of the alternative proposals. Obviously, if John brings in external funding, he's empowered to build what he wants to build. I'm certainly not going to resist that. But again, if he's looking for rewards from the DAO, et cetera, it doesn't make sense to sprinkle those across a couple of game concepts. Like, we've got to pick a path here forward, and we need to do it quickly so that we can start iterating. Now, granted, we're already working on the Shadow Forge updates, because regardless of what happens, like, we're going to do that. The question really becomes, like, I don't want to start Uniforge work until we're on the same page there, and in particular Twilight Tactics, kind of the 2.0 loop. So it's not like we're just sitting around doing nothing. We have plenty of work to do. But yes, in the next week or so, I hope to see signal from the community around a viable path. As you can imagine, I don't want to sit around and build a thing that people are hating on day one. And I'll go spend my time elsewhere. We'll start working on the next project, and we'll point the remaining funds at John's or SJ's idea, right? Like, again, we need to come together, figure out what we think is going to be the most viable path forward. I'm certainly looking for some signal from the community, especially now that the dust has settled and we're moving on to the later stages of kind of grieving what was and looking now ahead to how we give ourselves another shot.
All set. Okay, we have a question from Yokoro. What do you think about burning all of the leftovers into one, for example, 333 collection, and not manage the sheer number of NFTs that we have right now?
Yeah, I mean, that is a part of the fully on-chain gaming proposal, is to do a very significant burn down of corns. There would be a chance of loss relative to the mythic tier of the corn, right? So non-mythics are going to get burned all the time. This is an idea directly from Prof that I loved, which was to keep legendary mythics with our legends, so they should not have any burn chance. And I think that's cool. It'll add a lot of value to the corns that have the highest tier mythic rarities. And again, we would end up after, several iterations of that game loop with less and less and less assets over time. Obviously, this was behind land burn as well, which you would effectively burn. Taking your land progression and putting it into your Uniforge, I get why people don't want that. We have ideas around doing staking, where if you unstake, it de-levels you, and so you lose that progress. That progress is soul bound, so we're eliminating the ability to just spread a few land cards around and get what you need. But again, if we keep land static, obviously net new demand is necessary to bring prices up or even keep them stable. If we deflate supply of assets, you need less and less net new demand over time. And as yield grows, you can actually see value increase. And again, like, I'm saying all the naughty words at this point, Gensler can come after me, but it is really all about how you set up these mechanism designs, how you time the market. Again, I'm ripping the Band-Aid off of, any belief I had that people are here for any other reason beyond especially this early at projects. You're speculating, you're all hoping that value will increase. We've failed drastically at that. I had a vision of trying to build fun game loops that would engage and bring more and more people in. I think we failed at that for a number of reasons. We don't have the resources to pursue that further. And so now I'm back to the root of what I think made us successful in the beginning, and where I think we can have success, assuming we get a little bit of a bull market turnaround. And bonus points if we, add this thing with unbounded potential in, like, Gods of Olympus Realm Shards, which obviously would have their own token drop associated with it. And now you start to see what other projects have done successfully, which is, oh, don't dump this token because you're going to get this other token. That's seemingly worked well for a few groups in the space. And there's a number of ways that we could design that. But just trying to be honest about where I am focused and the direction and vision that I want to head. And again, compare that with the visions from other parties. And let's try to get to consensus around what we think is going to work best.
All right, we have a final question related to staking. Time Traveler asks, what do you think about burning any excess CU in the staking allocation? So there is enough for anything staked as of today, but any staked CU past 12 months from the burn day would not accrue reward.
Run that by me again.
So he wants to burn any excess CU in the staking allocation. So there's enough for anything that's being staked right
Mm,
now, but past 12 months, nothing would accrue reward. Is that right, Time Traveler?
yeah, I mean, okay, so I understand that. I mean, I'm not opposed to that because I care more about, CULP. I think we should all care about that more. Um, we could technically shift. The problem is it's in the vault. I'm just thinking about how governance would work. I think that's probably the struggle there. But staking to govern versus staking, or providing liquidity to earn, XI and things like that. So I'm not opposed to that. I don't have an allergic reaction to that. But we should do a poll check. And obviously, there are a lot of other people in that pool besides you and me, Time Traveler. So, um, I think generally when we look at how CU will inflate for the fully on-chain game, what I'm proposing is just applying an exponentially decreasing curve. So whatever remains in the play to earn pool will go into a contract, and every single seasonal reset, there will be less and less CU available to be earned, right? This will also kind of incentivize those early games and participation around those early games. And then if you couple that with CU burned in the event, buyback and burn, all of that kind of stuff. Again, I'm trying to burn things maximally because that is the only way, given static demand or even less demand over time, that you might have value held in assets. And so looking at trying to create very hyper deflationary mechanisms and matching those with increases in yield is really what is important. Everybody shows up and just thinks they're going to create these perpetual economies, and that's bullshit. Games do not last that long. And there's really very few historically that have lasted long enough. And we all know their names, right? And so it's like, let's be realistic about how you bootstrap, sustain, and maintain these economies in this space, what people really care about in this space, and again, leaning into it. I'm tired of watching things like Fremtech and Fantasy Top and fucking Pump.Fun generate tons of fees and revenue. And all the games sit around here and struggle. And I think too many founders in this space are focused in the wrong areas. And again, I'm excited about things like Enzo Racing, which has this amazing beta going on right now. Super easy to spin up, test flight, build. You start earning currency very quickly. Obviously, it's all testnet stuff. Privy, which is similar to Third Web, doing embedded wallet stuff. Very easy to sign up. Like Gangster Arena on Blast, is like a web app you add to your home screen. Runs you through the tutorial really quickly, like Dapmon, if you've seen Dapmon on Base, right? Like, to me, these are the projects that I think are closer to product market fit than much of what we've seen, particularly during the bear market. You had all this VC funding go into the space, and they chased a bunch of AAA opportunities and bullshit. Some of those games are launching and failing now. Others will launch and fail later. Again, I'm trying to be open about where I'm biased for everyone here, just because this has been a brutal push. We've tried a lot of things that didn't work, and I want to return back to where we've had success and where I think the space is headed, right? So very focused on collectible NFT project that is gamified. The game itself is effectively, you put assets at risk through some amount of strategy and skill. Those assets get redistributed. There are less and less assets over time. And again, trying to match that with more and more yield via the IRL stuff, via just price appreciation, general market, etc. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse. Sparkly, other questions?
Yeah. Okay, we have from DR. Considering the full on chain transition, what do you think would be roughly the difference in fine tuning and updates? in terms of pace in comparison to the previous hybrid setup?
So the benefit of fully on chain is like we're going to set and to a certain extent forget in terms of the mechanism design on chain. What will be an ongoing cadence are like leaderboard events. The benefit of the leaderboard events is they're going to be on chain, which we never had problems with any of the on chain. For the most part, with any of the on-chain data, because it's on-chain, there's no server client bullshit. VPN doesn't matter, right? So um, I haven't decided if it makes sense to continue doing 90 days or do shorter kind of 30-day events. And we're still determining exactly how long each loop will run in kind of the fully on-chain game in terms of how quickly a cycle basically occurs and then the board gets reset. So those details need to be worked out, and then we'll match a live ops plan to it. I don't think it'll be any less frequent than 90 days. There is a question around, do we do something more frequent, like every month, for example.
All right. Another question from Time Traveler. What if CU asset holders and token holders get token allocation for Gods of Olympus in exchange for their CU and NFTs? So CU founders would become part of the new project as founders.
Right now, I'm pretty focused on Genesis Mint passes. And again, I'm not interested in charging hundreds and hundreds of dollars, for those realm shards and things. I think that's the wrong way to go about it. The mechanism design behind Go is to try to drive significant LP fee revenue and use that as what bootstraps the project, not massive mint sales, which set poor expectations. I think you should look at like what just happened with the Crypto Kitties Eggs community, where they sold at a very, very low rate, something like 20 plus X, very quickly. And so to me, that's indicative of, okay, low cost mints are really the way to go. I think the problem here, Time Traveler, is if we're going to start something fresh, adding any amount of baggage or weight to a new token economy is kind of the antithesis of everything I'm trying to do here, right? So I'd really hesitate to say, oh, let's just do some allocation and let people get in on that front. I would rather say, here is a path to getting a mint of a thing that is going to get its own drop of tokens and assets and things and give us kind of this fresh start. So anyway, that's currently where my head's at. I'm certainly open to opinions around that, but I think that's why, again, I would prefer to set CU up for its shot and not just give up on it and move on to a new thing. So that's currently where my head's at, keeping an open mind and certainly open to ideas and feedback that the community has. But right now, I think it makes more sense to keep them separate, which is versus burdening a new project with 3+ years of history from crypto unicorns. So again, trying to find a way to make sure the OGs and key members here who have been here throughout, still hold assets, get a shot at a new opportunity alongside all of us for the remainder of the LG team who's left, and kind of go from there. That's a good question to ask, though, Time Traveler.
All right. One final question from Wasper. Are legendary coins going to have any special utility in the new game?
Yes. I mean, they're the highest stat, most powerful corns, right? So kind of the idea you think of is like your Uni Forge is where you're going to passively mint gummies, which are the equivalent of minions for the unicorn side. And then as you're looking to deploy into a region, there's no more of that BS of trying to find some Shadowcorn squad and all that crap that was poorly balanced in the first place. It's much more, again, about risk. It's a war of attrition. So your unicorn commander effectively is your baseline stat, and then you adding a gummy army behind it on kind of sliders is very similar to like Forex strategy games, is going to be this buff. So if you have a legendary corn, like you're already kind of at the top, and you could potentially deploy it with a smaller gummy army to move the needle in a specific region. And then, of course, the legendaries have zero ability to get burned because they're legends, right? So they will be, they will have no chance of dying in the forest, where at least per current spec, every other tier below them will have some very small chance, all the way down to a pretty significant chance of common corns. And again, the ultimate goal is to burn down the overall supply of assets. And what we end up with is the grails, the collectibles, the ones people care about, like my Easy Keeper Ted that I have a damn painting of over my dining room table. Like I'm never burning Easy Keeper Ted because I'm attached to him. But otherwise, a ton of my donkeys are going to go into the fire of the dark forest in pursuit of, in pursuit of the yield, right? So, anyway, so yes, there is utility for legendary mythics, and I think some kind of special stuff there.
All right. Okay, I believe that is our last question. Let's finish up with a message from Randy Orden, better known as Mr. RKO. Thanks, Aaron and team, for not giving up on the hardest time you're facing right now. Transparency is key, and I appreciate that. Much love and respect to better outcomes. Outcome.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think Andrew said it earlier. I'll just kind of repeat it. It's like, um, the only reason I am still here is because y'all are still here. I've never worked on something that's captivated people as much, and it doesn't matter to me if it was financial incentive, a love of the IP, some combination of both. I'm here for the same reasons, and again, that's why I don't want to just abandon it and move on to the next thing. I want to try to find a path where it gets a final kind of shot, and there's something to do with what remains. And maybe one of my wild ass ideas, like the toys and merch stuff, catches a gear. You start to see revenue come in for that, and there's a perpetual motion machine there, right? And so, anyway, I'm so appreciative of everyone who is still here, and despite this blow that we've all taken, is in the trenches trying to find a path forward, keeping an open mind over the next couple of weeks. And I want to get to signal on what we all want to do, and let's run at it as quickly as possible, because we've got to get something in place and prepare for this kind of coming wave. And bonus points if we can find a way to parlay that into a second project. I've always been, again, based on responses we've had in the past when we've brought up Gods of Olympus, concerned, but now happy to see at least some interest in that. I am going to be revealing more details, and we'll be looking for honest gut checks. We've all lived the same shit together, and so look at what the thesis of that project, look at the major changes that we're making from what we had with crypto unicorns, and I'll be excited to get feedback in addition to everything else we've talked about. So thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to the next one. And I guess we've got a working session while some of us are together in Singapore, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's the plan. Yeah.
Token 2049. Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Just like with Rare Evo, if anyone's going to be there, feel free to let us know. We're going to be in Singapore for whatever it is, a couple of days there. I think I'm there a day early to recover from a little bit of jet lag. Obviously, a sunk cost. This is a trip that we booked like months ago, and even at the beginning of the year, we had kind of pegged to 2049 as potentially the NFT NYC from 2021 of this year. And based on what I'm seeing in Korea, Blockchain Week and stuff, it very well could be. So a big event. We're not doing a booth or any kind of event or anything like that. It's low spend, mostly just networking. Xi folks are going to be there, so going to get some FaceTime in with them and just continue to reaffirm and update them on all the latest as things continue to progress, and explore every other opportunity that'll be there in Singapore. So yeah, for any of y'all in Asia that'll be in Singapore, shoot me a DM or something, and at the very least we can say hi and grab a drink or something.
Absolutely. Okay, that concludes our town hall number 61. We've answered all the questions in the thread as well as non questions, hoping that we can maintain this for the next week's town hall. Look forward to our working session as well. I'm going to be posting details of that in our announcement and event section on the Discord. We'll post a recording of this on our socials if you would like to give it a read-listen, and don't forget to share this with your friends and fellow Unicorn fam who couldn't make it. If you have more burning questions, feel free to ask on our support channels. That's the Mod Support channel and the Ask LG Team channel. This has been Sparkly Unicorn, hosting co-founder and CEO Aaron and growth director Zayori. Good morning, good night, Unicorn fam. Ooh, ooh.
Ooh.
Ooh, ooh.
Bye, chat.